Welcome back, friends, to the NCFCA Online Summit. My name is Amy Joy Tofty, and I serve as the Director of Education for NCFCA Christian Speech and Debate. Since 2001, NCFCA has equipped and challenged Christian students to communicate truth with integrity and grace. To learn more about our training and competitive opportunities, please visit ncfca.org. We look forward to connecting with you. So please feel free to use the chat box to introduce yourself, to ask questions, and to join in the conversation. And at the end of the session, we're going to give you an opportunity just to come on screen and chat with our guest. So in Summit Session 3, we will be discussing how we can prepare to speak by reframing our fears of public speaking as opportunities for growth, by refocusing our efforts on skills, and by recognizing the value of our voices. Our guest speaker today is Mrs. Heather Sampson, NCFCA Region 5 Director, the NCFCA Interpretation Speech Intensive Team Lead, and a speech coach at Areopagus KC. She and her husband, Kevin, have 2 sons. In high school, Mrs. Sampson competed in open interpretation and duo interpretation. She is an avid gardener, bird watcher, and paddleboard enthusiast. So Heather, thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you for having me, Amy Joy.
So what is the weather like down where you live?
It's nice at the moment, but we're about to have thunderstorms. So we'll pray that the internet connection holds out well.
Right. That's right. Well, inquiring minds want to know what speech competition was like back in the day.
Certainly. When I competed, I went to a public high school in Manhattan, Kansas, and forensics was the class that you took if you wanted to compete in public speaking. And I took forensics 2 or 3 years at my public high school, and it was just a semester long. If you debated in the fall, and if you did forensics, you competed in the spring. But it was really different than competing in the NCFCA, because at the beginning of the season, my coach would say, hey, I think you and this other person should be partners this year for duo, for instance. And here is the piece that I think you should use. And so there was far less ability for me to choose and to engage in that initial creative process. But nonetheless, I loved speech and debate in high school. My favorite event by far was duo interpretation, and I also did open interpretation.
Okay, so before you got to be really competitive and really talented, what was your greatest fear about giving a speech?
Oh, I think like so many teenagers, just the idea that I'm going to get up in front of people and they're going to look at just me for 10 minutes, that was terrifying. I was also afraid of what if I said something wrong, or what if I trip and stumble? It was very me-centered kinds of things that caused me to feel afraid.
Absolutely. And those are pretty common from what I understand. It turns out that according to most studies, the number one fear is public speaking, covered or only, before number 2, which is a far distant fear, which is death. So let's talk about, you've worked with lots of students over the years. What are some of their common fears?
I think their fears are very similar. What are my judges, my audience going to think of me? Am I going to remember my speech? Is my message something that other people are going to be interested in? Or how are people going to respond to the message I feel like God has given me to speak? And also just the fear of the unexpected. I mean, I talk to students who are like, what if X thing happens all the time? And just remembering, to be at peace and to be in the moment and to work through the public speaking process. The more experienced competitors get, the more at ease they always feel.
It's really interesting to watch that process too. This year we had several competitions held online, And that gave some of our more timid competitors an opportunity to kind of get over that fear of who's in the room. And then many of them also had the privilege then to go to in-person tournaments as well, and to take that to the next level. So let me just ask you though, if I'm one of those people, I'm really afraid of public speaking, and I'm just paralyzed by fear, does it mean I'm not cut out for it? Should I just kind of stay away from it?
Absolutely not. 74% of people are afraid of public speaking. And the way I look at a fear of public speaking, because our audience should know, I speak in front of large groups often, but that doesn't mean I am never afraid, even now. And so I have to, as I am thinking about what I'm doing and the fear that I feel, I have to remember that if I am in a position to public speak, that God has put me there for a reason. And so when I can remember that there's a purpose for why I'm speaking, it helps me to move past my fear. I think the other thing I have to remember is if God has given me a gift, and He's given me the gift of my voice, and He's given us all gifts of speaking in some way, He expects me to use that gift and to hone that gift for His glory. And so the way my honed gift looks in the end might be vastly different than how someone else's gift looks in the end. But I am still expected by God to use this voice to glorify Him.
And I'm not sure that public speaking is any different than any other skill. So students, let's be clear. Y'all are probably much more comfortable being online and using all these technical tools than Mrs. Sampson and I are. So I have no fear of public speaking and a terrible fear of technology. So yes, the more we practice, the more we get out there, the more we use those skills, we will learn from all of the victories, and we will learn from all of the not yet successes. So how can we help our students? How can we help each other to reframe our fears as opportunities?
I think we have to remember that we have to start today on anything we're afraid of. Little steps that we can begin to take help us move forward to conquer our fears. So, some ways to start today would be listening to great speeches. We have speech and debate finals coming up this afternoon. What a
Yes.
great opportunity to listen to fabulous speakers and become motivated yourself to speak in front of others. I think another way to reframe our fears as opportunities is to find a place to practice, a safe place to learn and to develop your voice. For some of you, that might just be with your family members in your own home, where you intentionally take time week after week to work on speaking skills. It might also look like joining a local club where you can practice speaking. I think that the other thing that really helps us to get past our fears is to find the message God has given us to speak. And so when we are passionate about the message we're delivering, it really helps us to move beyond a place of fear and into a place of excitement to share with others the message God has put on our hearts.
That's great. Well, in our first session today, one moment there, a little bit of technical difficulty. Okay. In session one, Mrs. Burson was talking about living life on mission, finding your purpose, finding your voice. So what are some of the questions that students can ask themselves to find out what they're passionate about, to find out what they want to speak about?
I know in our home, I have two sons who ask different questions when they think about what they want to speak on. One would always say, what do I feel God wants me to work on? And so he wrote speeches on things like solitude and silence, because he felt God calling him to a place to learn more about solitude and silence in God's presence. He also wrote a speech on gratitude, because he felt like God was calling him to engage deeper in the practice of gratitude. I have another son who really looks at the questions of, what experiences has God given me that have sparked a passion, and therefore he expects me to go speak on those issues and talk to others about them. And so one year he did a speech on slavery, on IJM and modern day slavery, because that was a passion God had put on his heart. So by asking questions of ourselves, what do I want to improve on? What matters to me or my family members? What message do I hear God calling me to speak on? Those are all great questions to use to find a voice and a message to speak on to other people.
It's one of my favorite things about competitive speech and debate. So many times my children, I see the life lessons that they're learning coming out through through a platform. My daughter wrote a piece this year on an experience that our family went through where we had been separated because we had some technical or maybe plumbing or maybe septic difficulties at our house. And so for months, we were actually living in 3 separate places. And at first she was so blessed by that. She didn't have 6 kids in the house and she had her own space. And over that time apart, God really started to show her the value of each of those different people in our family. And so things would come up and she would go to contact a sibling who wasn't there. And so after time, we finally ended up all back together. And what God taught her is, yes, we are a great, big, crazy family that lives in a really tiny house. And she really wouldn't have it any other way. And so I saw how God worked that lesson into her life. Now, the funny thing is she's convinced that COVID came because we spent a year apart. And so COVID made us spend a year together.
Yes, oh, that's funny.
But you can learn great lessons. Now, I also have an introvert. I have a daughter who's very, very much an introvert. So can you think of any examples in scripture where God called on somebody to speak who really didn't want to?
So this is one of my favorite biblical examples, and it's the story of Esther. Scripture tells us she didn't confidently burst into the king's chambers to communicate with him and set the record straight and tell him about evil Haman's plot against the Jews. Instead, she was nervous. So she sought counsel and she prayed, and she chose to speak because she saw that there was an eternal purpose past her fear that God was calling her to speak into. I mean, the story just gives me the shivers. In Esther 4:14, I'm going to read it. It says, "For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this." I mean, such a time as this is going to look different in my life and in your life. I had the pleasure of talking with an NCFCA mama last spring about her large family of students who were now adults. Mm-hmm. And she had an older son who was in the state senate for Minnesota. And his voice was a very powerful, big voice for that moment.
Yes.
Her second daughter, who was very much an introvert and was afraid of public speaking, was working in prison ministry in Florida prisons, where she day after day, one-on-one, in a very quiet way, shared the gospel with prisoners. I mean, that was her moment to glorify God and to speak up. So the story of Esther just gives me hope and inspiration that I'm to use this voice that God has given me for whatever purpose and whatever moment he calls me to.
That is right. It reminds me a little bit of the parable of the talents, right? Whether you're given 2 or 5 or 10, God says, do something with it. So he has given you a voice. It's your instrument of influence. So the question is, what are you doing with it? And one thing I know as a mom, I don't know what all of my children will grow up and become. God has not made that clear yet. But here's what I know. They are called to communicate the gospel, and they are called to speak truth into whatever sphere God puts them in. And so as a mom, I look at that as my responsibility to say, we're going to develop communication skills. You have a toolbox. Here is your communication toolbox. How do you tell a story? How do you give an interp? How do you address current issues of the day? That's extemporaneous. All of those are different tools that they can put in their toolbox. So when God gives them the privilege of the platform, they won't be intimidated, they won't be paralyzed by fear, and they will have the tools and the resources necessary to take that stage and proclaim the truth of Jesus. So let's talk a little bit now about refocusing our efforts on skills. So we're not aiming, so NCFCA is a competitive organization. We do offer tournaments around the United States where kids can come and compete and earn medals. But that's not why we do what we do. We use that as an incentive because we really want our students to develop skills. So Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, all great speakers were bad speakers first. So wherever you're at in this journey, what are some skills, Mrs. Sampson, that we can help our speech students to gain confidence?
You bet. I think first off, discover your message. In the NCFCA, we have 3 different categories of speeches. One is platform speaking, which is kind of what I spoke to earlier, having a message about a particular subject that God has put on your heart. So you're going to get up and speak on that. But other messages that we can discover come in the form of literature, where we, in the process of reading great literature, have discovered a message in the story that we feel God calling us to share. And so your message you might discover is in the form of literature. We also offer limited prep styles of speaking and impromptu speaking, apologetics, and extemporaneous, which is about current events. And so maybe the message you feel called to speak towards is sharing the gospel and being able to defend it through apologetics, or learning about current events and helping other people to understand those events and the implications of those events. So discovering your message is a great first step. Discovering your style, I just talked about that, platform versus inter. And then developing your speech. Yes. And Amy Joy, I don't know about you, but this is where my kids were always like, okay, I figured out my message. Now what do I do?
Right.
So that is where I say our intensives this summer, yes, and a local speech and debate club can be of great benefit, because when you develop a platform speech, you're going to learn things such as, okay, I need to research and organize and edit and refine. And oh, this platform speech, it has a structure, that intro, thesis, points and conclusions kind of structure. And having people to come alongside and help you to develop that speech is such a gift and a blessing, especially when you're first getting started.
Absolutely. So you mentioned our speech intensives. What other kinds of resources do you recommend to folks who are just getting started?
You bet. NCFCA also offers a speech curriculum and a debate curriculum that are great tools, especially if you are starting a speech club or you are just starting speech as a family. Our curriculum will allow you to sit down with your new club or your family and prepare your students, not just for competition season, but for being lifelong public speakers. Our curriculum is full of, first off, the instruction, but also multiple activities for every lesson that make the learning interactive and a lot of fun. Today we're sitting here having a conversation, and I've wondered how many people here are students versus how many people here are parents. Yes. But when we use our curriculum, or if you come to the intensives later this summer, that will be an opportunity to really interact, engage with the material that you're learning, and to do activities that make the learning a lot of fun and to practice the skills that you're beginning to learn.
Can you talk just a little bit in that curriculum? I know it's divided into different modules. So how can people use those different modules in whatever circumstance they might find themselves in?
Certainly. So there are interp modules, platform speech modules, and limited prep modules. Different clubs and families use those in different ways.
Mhm.
And I help lead Areopagus KC Speech and Debate. And in our club, we spend a chunk of time at the beginning of the year, usually 6 weeks on platform, and then 6 weeks on interp, and then a few weeks on limited prep. That's how we use it.
Mhm.
But I know of a club in Minnesota that does interp all one
Yes.
year, and they really dive deep into interp skills. How do I cut? How do I develop characters? How do I develop my blocking? How do I discover a theme? And they delve really deep one year in interp, and then the next year they did platform. And I know this year that club is going to be using the curriculum and our intensives to dive deep into impromptu speaking, apologetics, and extemporaneous speaking.
Yes. Yes. So those are great opportunities for flexibility. So I just want to encourage you, if you're just getting started, you don't have to we have 11 events in NCFCA, 10, 11, usually somewhere around there, but you don't have to do them all. You can choose and really focus on one thing, because every year you can build on it. So we have competitors from 12 all the way up to 19. And so you have a lot of years to develop these skills. But I do appreciate something that Del Cook said in our last session. He said, take the age of your child, subtract it from 18, and multiply it by 52. That's the number of weekends you have left with your child. So I have 2 that are already out of our home. We have 4 coming behind, but the time is short. So investing now and starting to build those different pieces along the way is just really helpful. I will tell you, learning with friends is just more fun. So talk to me about local clubs. You mentioned Areopagus KC. Tell me a little bit about what club life looks like.
Certainly. Clubs look different across the country.
Yes.
Some clubs meet every single week from August through May. And in those clubs, they might have lessons, they'll play games, they would practice speeches and maybe receive feedback from coaches. Other clubs meet once a month. And while they're together, students might deliver their speech for coaches and
Yes.
receive feedback and play games, but then they go home to do the majority of their instruction time. So the club model is very, very flexible. I know of some clubs in my region, Region 5, that one week they meet to do speech and the next week they meet
Yes.
to do debate.
Mhm.
So you'll find numerous models across the country. There are in-person clubs in every state, I think, or at least almost every state. And then for those of you who cannot connect with an in-person club, I know that there are online clubs that also exist that have particularly helped people during COVID to stay connected.
We learned a lot during COVID, and we found that communication doesn't stop, and the need for communication skills actually increases. So yes, we used our season well. I feel like our students have continued to develop those skills along the way, and some of us have even learned a few technology things as well. That's great. I do want to speak to our schools. If you are a teacher or a school administrator and you're joining us today, we are able to help you plan out how you could potentially use these curricula in your schools. So there is the flexibility to set up a 16-week course, a 30 or 18-week course, 36-week course. Those are options. And again, it goes back to building in both instruction time, but then practice time for your students. That's really important. I can't stress that enough. We're not teaching theoretical ideas. We're teaching actual skills that students can apply. So that's fantastic. Well, Heather, I want to open it up to our friends in the audience. If you do have questions, you are welcome. We're going to stick around here and answer your questions. Let's press into the speech intensive, the interp intensive. Tell me about your team. Tell me about what is going to happen with that this summer.
You bet. We are meeting on July 29th and 30th. We have 3 alumni who are coming alongside to help us lead the sessions. Our first session is going to be on choosing good literature and how do we do that and why it's important to choose the right piece from the start. Then we're going to spend 3 entire sessions on how do you cut your literature. I think cutting, especially longer pieces of literature, is particularly difficult for our students. And so we'll spend 3 entire sessions doing that. Then we'll spend 1 session on character development and how to give your characters their own voice and presentation and how you go about thinking about character development. Then we'll spend 2 sessions on developing the scene around you, that theater of the mind, and then working on specific interp skills, such as popping and sight lines and transitioning. And then our final session of the intensive is going to be on writing introductions and conclusions to interp speeches. And that will really be focused on finding the theme of your piece and how do you draw out that theme really specifically as you cut your literature and you write your introduction.
So Heather, what are some different ways that our guests can participate in this intensive?
Certainly. You can join us live that day. You can come as a family or as a club and participate by watching the teaching. And then we have breakout group leaders that will lead small group activities. But if you're joining us in a group, say as part of a school or a club, then when we come to the activity time, you will have a guide that you can use to lead those activities with your own students offline, in person, so that your club is really learning those skills together. We'll also be recording the entire experience so that you could use the teaching as part of your club instruction as you begin starting up club in the fall. That would also be an option.
That's great. Well, friends, I want to thank you for joining me and Mrs. Sampson this afternoon. We are going to stay here. I would love for you just to turn your cameras on. You're going to see we'll start an informal conversation, and you are welcome to just join us and ask us any questions that you have about preparing to speak. Whether you're a student or a parent, we're glad you're here. We will have one more session today, beginning at 3:30. That is called That's Debatable. And that I'll be joined by Christy Shipe, who is the author of our debate curriculum for NCFCA. She also serves as our board chair. And it just so happens that she, as a young woman, was challenged by her father to start a homeschool speech and debate league, and she did. And now we look at just how God has blessed that, expanded it across the country, opened it not only to homeschoolers, but to private Christian schools as well. God is certainly blessing the mission of NCFCA, and we even have friends in Brazil who are getting involved. So we're so excited about what God's doing. Natasha asks, I can see the link to purchase a spot in the intensive, but the link to find out more is not working. Is there a better place to find it? Natasha, thank you so much for pointing that out to us. We'll get working on that right now to make sure that you're able to participate as a club. We will take care of that. So let me just tell you a little bit about those club options. We have 3 different options. If your club is wanting to meet during the live event, the club hybrid package allows you to stream that during the live event. And so you'd have that online coaching experience, but you'd all be together. And when it came time to do the activities, you would just turn the live stream off and you would manage those activities locally there with your own students in your own club. If you are a club that says, hey, we would really like the coaching, but we're not able to meet during that live event, then you can choose the club in-person package and you'll receive the recordings. So it's year-long access to the video recordings. You can host that event anytime you want. And then last but not least, if you're a really experienced club leader and you just want some activities that are geared towards this year's resolutions, this year's speech events, then you can purchase just the activity guide, and that allows you to make copies for all of your coaches, all of your club leaders. That's a great resource. London, great question. How much do the intensives cost for just one person? I want to encourage you to go to ncfca.org/intensives and then choose the intensive that you're interested in at the top of the screen. And the reason is because those intensives are either 1 day, 2-day, or 3-day events. And so the price varies based on how long the event is. So you can find out all of that information. You bet. Absolutely. My pleasure. Any other questions? You are welcome to put them in the chat box. Chrissy, I'm so excited that you're going to be teaching in a private school. We're working hard to make resources available to folks in the private school. Our goal is to get these tools to as many people as possible. I also just want to let you know that there are other opportunities to get involved in NCFCA. So if you're interested in just catching a glimpse of our mission in action, tonight at 5:30 p.m., you have an incredible privilege, which is brought to us thanks to COVID, because you can tune in live to our national championship and you can stream our final rounds. So you can see students giving their interpretation speeches and their platform speeches and their limited preps, and it will paint a picture for you. Heather, how did you first hear about NCFCA?
Oh, gracious. We homeschooled all the way through, and because I'd competed in speech and debate, I just was looking for speech and debate for my students when my older son was in about 5th or 6th grade. And for several years, we kept asking questions, and we knew there was a local club. And, just kind of through the homeschool grapevine, we found out that yes, there was a local club, but it was full and full year after year. And so that inspired a group of 7 of us to start Areopagus KC.
Which is a great point. If there is not a club near you, please contact me. My name and email is amyjoytofty@ncfca.org. And I will tell you that we are much the same. We were driving a distance to go to club, and a group of us decided, you know what, we'd like to offer this locally in our own town. We knew nothing. And we trusted the Lord and we used the curriculum, and it got us started on a really firm foundation. So you can start a club very easily. We're happy to help you do that. I was invited by a friend. I found out about NCFCA from a friend who said, you've got to come see this. And I did not say yes for 3 years. Okay. And finally, I went to a tournament. And when I saw what these young people are capable of, it just reminded me, C.S. Lewis has a quote that sometimes we dream too small. We're busy making mud pies instead of enjoying the castle by the sea. And so it's this reminder that our young people are able to do amazing things if they're given the tools and the resources to develop their skills. And so I love this activity. It's been fantastic for me. And we're now on our 6th child who is looking forward to being able to start NCFCA. And all of them are unique. All of them are different, but all of them have benefited from NCFCA. Are there any intensive? That is a great question. Are there intensives for digital presentation? Not yet, but we will talk about digital presentation in the platform speech intensive. So you can sign up for that one and get some basic understanding, and I'll put that on our list of things to do. Any other questions? Oh, great question. Natasha asks, when you began your club, did you focus on one event?
That's a great question. We didn't, but we didn't tackle limited preparation speeches the first year at all. Our first year, we talked about interps and we talked about platforms, and we were a little group of 7 students.
Yes.
7 years later, we are 40 students strong. But I will tell you, it was wonderful having a club this year with 40 students, but it was sweet when we had a club with only 7 students, because you have time to pour into each student. As moms, you learn to coach those students together.
Mhm.
And I look back on those years with some of the greatest memories. So, no, we didn't start with just one speech, but we did just do platforms and interps our first year. How about you, Amy Joy?
Yes, our first year we did one style of debate, and we chose policy debate because that's the most concrete, the most objective skill. So greater range in age can participate in that activity. And then we did platform speech as well. Not that some of our students didn't compete in interps, because you can compete in the NCFCA whether you're part of a club or not. So some of our students, they wanted to do that. They read the rules, they prepared their speeches, and they competed in that. But what we taught in club was just platform and policy debate. What is the best age to join? That is a great question, Julie. So Heather, I'm going to let you take that first, and then I'll share a thought too.
Okay. So, according to league rules, and Amy Joy, this has changed. Is it 12 now
Well,
by September 1st? Is that the correct
we will double
deadline?
check that, but it is 12.
It
Yes.
is
So,
12, but it might not be at the beginning of the year. So we'll check that for you.
yes.
I will tell you, I have a son who started at 12 and loved it, and it was a perfect fit for him. My other son, we hadn't started the club yet, so he started it at 13. We have students, though, who join our club their senior year of high school. Speech and debate isn't something that they have ever done, and
Mhm.
they either found out about us or they decided, well, that's a skill I really want to grow in. And so they joined us for just 1 year. So I would say that there is no better time to start developing your skills as a public speaker than today, whether you are 12 or 17.
That was going to be my answer. The best time to start is today. Wherever you're at, you'll be able um, to grow and to learn. If you're 12, we're probably going to start you out in learning how to do a platform speech, how to bring out your own voice and find out what that message is that God has for you to speak. But if you are at the tail end and you're getting ready to go to college and you think, wow, I've never done this before. Can I do this as a senior in high school? Not only can you, but you should, because you're about to do college interviews and you're about to do job interviews and you're about to walk into a place where you know absolutely no one. And being able to speak with confidence, being grounded in what you believe and being able to articulate that with other people and to engage in conversations, those are skills that you will definitely develop in NCFCA. Yes, okay, London. That is a great question. So you do have to be enrolled in high school in order to compete in the NCFCA. So again, I'll encourage you all to go to the website and look for that eligibility, and you can look at the finer points of what that looks like. If you have a high school degree, then yes, you need to go on now and compete in college, which you can do. There are others. Are there events for the junior league? Natasha, several of our clubs offer juniors as well for students roughly from the ages of 8 to 11. And we do at our regional tournaments, we offer juniors. So Heather, tell me what that looks like in your region.
Certainly. Region 5 is a small region. We comprise Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota. And so it really feels like a family at our tournaments. Normally we have 80 to 100 competitors, but we'll often have 20 or 30 juniors at our tournament.
Mhm.
And so we usually have 2 times during the day where there are very specific activities for them to come do, games to engage in. And some years we've had things like these passport cards where there were really specific activities for kids to do, where they had to go watch a particular kind of speech or go tell someone at the tournament they were thankful, or they had to go talk to an advanced competitor about the speeches they were giving and why they were giving them. But our juniors program offers great opportunities for these younger students to begin competing in some of the same areas as our advanced speakers, because we often will have a junior tournament alongside our junior activities in our region. And that is a lot of fun. I think perhaps the most fun I have ever had at a junior, watching juniors though, was we had a fantastic junior leader, and she didn't think it was just important for those students to know how to deliver a speech, but for them to understand how to walk with
Yes.
grace and dignity up on the stage and receive an award. Hold out your hand for your award, shake a person's hand. So those really, really valuable, practical life skills, those are also things that are taught through our juniors program that I just love.
One of my favorite parts about juniors is that it's our current competitors who then go and give back to that juniors. And so oftentimes, not only do you end up with one or three, but sometimes you'll have 7 competitor judges sitting there and judging, if you will, the juniors. But I have just an absolute gem of a story. My youngest son got ready to give his first speech at juniors, and he was so excited. That year, he did not ask for any toys for Christmas. He asked for a suit because he wanted to look like his older brothers and sisters. And so we bought him his very first, very small, I might add, suit.
Oh,
And so he is all dressed for the part. He's nervous. He's ready to go into the room. And these competitors were so gracious and so loving and so kind. And they just had these eager, excited faces, and they're writing on their ballots. And so I just have to be clear with you. We brought all those ballots home, and my son at the time couldn't read, but he is looking at those ballots and he is watching, and his eyes are even tracking across the ballot. And finally he looks up at me and he says, "They loved me."
I love it.
So I am so grateful for our competitors who pour back into the juniors what has been poured into them. It's a tremendous blessing. And it does, those young kids kind of get this waterfall effect where by the time they get up to compete, they have a lot of those skills developed. Because why? Some of what you said earlier, Heather, they've watched great speeches. They've evaluated what was persuasive to them and what wasn't. And so when they go to write their own speeches, they're ready.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there a way to find out what my regional leadership is? Natasha, there is. You can go to the website, and I'm going to try to put that for you in the chat box there, but it is under Join the League. And then there's a place where you can find a club near you. There's also an opportunity to go to the 3 bars at the top of your screen and choose team. So you can find both local club leadership, but then also you can find out the NCFCA team member who is nearest to you. So we have 10 regions, although they're numbered 1 through 11 and 4 is missing. If you want to know more about that, come check us out. We'll give you the backstory on that. 4 has been missing for some years. So that is the person that you would contact, and they can get you started. That's great. And Natasha, if you want to tell me where you're from, I will be happy to let you know who your RD is as well. New Jersey.
Krista Lopez.
Yes.
Right?
So Krista Lopez is the Region 10 director. You would be in Region 10. All right. William, I am going to give you the opportunity. Do you still have a question that you want to ask? I see your hand up there.
Yes, I do. So
Great.
the question I want to ask to both of you is, as a kind of like a second year student, what do you recommend to kind of focus on? Like, I'm pretty comfortable with talking, but I can't necessarily like figure out how to like memorize things correctly and cut correctly, especially with longer stories.
Great question, William. Heather, I'm going to let you tackle that.
Certainly. William, are you most interested in platform speaking or interp presentation?
I mean, I did a little bit of both. I did a little bit of interp and I did a little bit of persuasive, but I'm more focusing toward interp.
Okay.
Great.
William, I really, really encourage you to come to the intensive this summer, the interp intensive, because I feel like a lot of people, what they do, they start out in interp and they'll use a short children's book
Right.
that they can cut quickly, and it's easy for them to cut. And through that experience, okay, they learn character development and a little bit about developing a scene. But once you've done that, most people are ready to move on to cutting, just like you said, a larger work of fiction, but they just don't even know where to begin. We will teach you at our intensive the very concrete skills. How do you use the inverted hooked check mark to plot out your entire storyline?
Yes.
How to mark your book so that it's a tool that you use to create your cutting for your intern. And so I would like to just encourage you to say, whether you're a second year or you've been doing this for 6 years, there are always more skills to be learned. I mean, I can coach, I was coaching speeches right before nationals, very, very experienced competitors, but there's always something new to learn. I'll tell you what they were learning. They were grabbing a door handle like this. And we talked about when you grab a door handle, what do your knuckles do? What do the muscles in your hand look like? So there are fine details to becoming a fantastic interpreter and a fantastic platform speaker that you can continue to develop from the time you were 12 to 18 and far beyond. So come to the intensive is my encouragement for you.
I think we're already signed up.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. You're going to learn a lot. One of the things that I love is NCFCA actually gives you a whole toolbox of tools that you can use to pull out those best pieces. And it allows you to be much more creative. So as you learn to master those tools, which again, 3 sessions, we're going to be working on that. So I really think you're going to enjoy that. London, I see your hand up. Would you like to ask a question? Hi, London. London, I cannot hear you. Let's try that again. I'm going to ask you to unmute, see if that works. It may be that your microphone is not connected, London. If you want to type your chat into the chat box, I'm happy to ask your question and we'll go ahead and answer it. If anyone else has questions, please feel free. You can either use the raise your hand feature or you can type those into the chat box. We'd love to get to know you.
Amy Joy, I'm seeing a question farther up in the chat that is, do juniors register like other family affiliates?
Great.
And in your, I'm not going to remember the right word for it, Amy Joy.
Dashboard?
What's it called? Now on your dashboard, what's it called? Your profile. There's the word. On your profile, you can add your junior on your profile, and then that allows you to register your junior for junior events when you are registering your senior competitors for tournaments.
So they are different, again, because it's not, the juniors typically isn't a 3-day event, it's a 1-day event. There's a nominal fee for them to participate, but it's a great opportunity for them. They get very, very excited about it. And there is a lot of positive feedback that then kind of continues that spiral of yes, I want to do this over time. So London has a great question here. Do you have to pick the kind of speech you're doing before you pick your topic?
That is a fantastic question, London. And I would say no. I mean, you need to know if it's a platform speech or an interp event. That's going to be a good starting place. But say you decide you want to do a platform speech on electric cars. That's your topic. You could inform us about electric cars.
Yes.
You could decide you want to persuade us to use electric cars, or you might decide, wow, I've got all of this great these great images of electric cars. I want to do a digital presentation. Yes. So that one topic, depending on how you write your thesis statement and how you present it, could be any of those 3 platform speech categories. I'd say the same thing for an interp. Sorry, Amy Joy, did you want
No, you keep going. You keep going.
I was going to say the same thing for an interp. Sometimes you find a piece of literature that just resonates with you and you think, oh, wow, I love this piece of interp, but maybe you're a young man and a good half of the story is a female, and you think, I just don't think that that many female characters are going to work for me. Then that's when you might say, oh, this might be a good boy-girl duo literature selection. Sometimes, though, you find a piece that's got two great strong male leads, and you think, wow, I think I could do both of those characters, or I could do that with my buddy. So you have some options. You don't have to decide the category right away. I think beginning to find your message or find that piece of literature is a really great starting point.
Well, and London, I'm reading the second part of your question there. I want to do a speech on Pearl Harbor, but I'm back and forth between platform and interp. And I just want to say to you, sometimes God's putting either a theme or a topic in your mind, and you might end up doing 5 speeches on that topic. So I would continue to research that, look at stories about Pearl Harbor, see what actually pulls at your heart and says, this is the message. So your topic is Pearl Harbor, but your message might be people who sacrificially gave. It might be unexpected trials, right? Nobody was expecting Pearl Harbor. That was part of the issue. So I feel like keep digging into the topic, keep looking for things, and then just know this. You could do a platform on Pearl Harbor and you could do an interp story about Pearl Harbor. That's perfectly acceptable as long as those are unique speeches. Great. Yes, Natasha, I will get you her contact information. If you will send me an email at amyjoytofty@ncfca.org, I will be happy to get you in touch with her. William, come on live. I would love to hear your other question.
So you were talking a little bit about like how it can apply to everyone, how everyone has different skills, but like how, like, what's the best way to find those skills, like, and practice it correctly? Because I mean, the virtual tournaments were very good for practicing it, but it wasn't necessarily like the feel of a real tournament.
William, you are so spot on. And I assure you that we are doing everything in our capability to be back in person next year. So hopefully that will take care of itself. But you're exactly right. So much of communication is interpersonal. It's being able to see the body language and understand that. As far as how do you go about developing those skills, Heather, do you want to touch on that? Just what your encouragement would be there?
Sure. I think the more that you can speak in front of other people, finding that safe audience that can give you feedback in a really positive way, I think that is one of the best ways to develop your skills. I was talking about when we started Areopagus Casey, and someone asked in the chat, why did you choose Areopagus? Because it is the Greek word, I think it's Greek, for Mars Hill, and the other club in our city was Mars Hill. So it was our way of becoming sister clubs. But back to your question, when we started our little club, every week, students were slated to give speeches to a group of the moms there. And we just watched the speech, and we wrote down the things that the student did really well. And we wrote down a couple of things that we thought that competitor could work on. But there was nothing for developing the speaking skills of those 12, 13, 14-year-olds, like delivering a speech live and getting immediate positive feedback on one or two next steps. And if you are a new coach out there, my biggest encouragement for you is to ask the student, what message does God have for you? Because it's all about them. It is not about the message I think that God should have for them. Yes. Each of our students comes with a message that they feel like God has given them to speak on. So we ask them, what is the message God has for you? And then we meet them where they are at. You are going to see amazing, polished speeches in finals today. But our beginning speakers aren't there. It's like trying to, I was a kindergarten teacher for 20 years. You know, I can't take a kindergartner who doesn't know any of their letters or sounds and give them sentences to read. I start with a little bitty part, and every day, you know, I teach them the sound of one letter and the shape of a letter, and I build on their skills. And as a speech coach, you do the same. The first thing might be, well, let's work on standing still and not rocking back from side to side. Or let's work on looking at the eyes of the people you're speaking to. And you start with little bitty skills that you continue to build on and refine in order to end up a very polished speaker. But you start at the beginning.
One of the great things about being affiliated with NCFCA is that we have a resource library. And in that resource library, you can find ballots, which helps you with the criteria that we use to evaluate speech. So some of those things that Mrs. Sampson was just talking about, the content, the organization, the impact, your physical delivery, your vocal delivery. So when we first started speech, this was not my world. I am a math and science girl through and through. And I didn't really know how to even give feedback about speech. So the beautiful part for me is that NCFCA not only taught my children, they also taught me. And now I'm able to kind of use that language and say, wow, when you did this, it really moved me. Right. And I wouldn't have been able to do that before. So check out some of those resources. There are free resources. Again, if you go to ncfca.org, click on the 3 lines at the top, there is a link that you can get to for free resources. If you affiliate with the league, it's a nominal fee for your whole family to join for a calendar year. Then you're able to get, it's just a treasure trove. I mean, there are more resources there than you can possibly imagine. And the beautiful part is that you can sort it. So you can say, hey, I'm looking specifically for tools on interp speech. And you can toggle the little interp speech and it will limit all your search results just to that. So it's very usable. So I'm so excited. We have lots of different opportunities for giving speeches to your siblings, to your parents, and even to your dog. Those are all great options. I encourage all of them. I want to just give you a couple others. There are nursing homes full of people who would love to see young people for any reason. So when this COVID crazy ends and you are able to go back, go give a speech in a nursing home and then ask them what they really think. So keep in mind, we have a unique judging philosophy in the NCFCA. We do not hire professional judges because we want our students to learn to communicate with a wide variety of people. You need to be able to communicate with your barista at the coffee shop, with the elderly lady at the bus stop, wherever God places you. We want you to learn communication skills that you'll be able to communicate with anyone. And so we have a community judging philosophy where we invite members of the community. So yes, you will have some parents. Yes, you will have some coaches, and maybe, just maybe, you'll have me. But you will also have a wide variety of people from the community. So look for creative ways. Look for creative ways. I'm not sure if the audio cut out for everyone else. Oh, yes, youth group leaders. They are also great at listening to speeches. So I really appreciate that. Well, listen, folks, I'm so thankful that you joined us today for Preparing to Speak. In our next session, Christy Shipe is going to be talking about the need for and the value of healthy debate. It would not take you very long for you to find examples of unhealthy debate, but we believe that debate can look a whole lot different. So we're going to take just a short break here, and we'll start back up at 3:30 p.m. And then you are in for a special treat because our executive director, Kim Cromer, is going to come back at the end of the day. I'm warning you now, if you do not have hair and makeup done, go do it, because she is going to want to see your face. So I would love for you just to come on screen. I would really love if we could sit down in a coffee shop together, but we'll use this platform the very best that we can. Yes, Natasha, that is my email, and I will watch for your email and get you that contact information. So take a short break. We are going to put you back in the waiting room, and then we'll bring you in here briefly in just a moment. So we'll see you back at 3:30. And don't forget, live stream tonight at 5:30. You can choose any speech category you want. So again, go to ncfca.org, click on the Nationals button, and you'll see the live streams there. So we'll see you soon. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.